The loss of identity happened when my children became slightly older, and it's being out with them now. It's actually getting the stares because people will look at my daughter and look at my son and look at me and probably think, like, is she stepmom or is she auntie or is she a friend taking them out? I don't look anything like my kids. I had my bridal outfit made so that my feet were covered. My arms were covered up to here, and I had makeup done where it was completely covered, so no one would have seen a thing. When I started out my career, I was in banking. I worked in Canary Wharf, and I remember wearing these long suits, and I remember dreading getting on that train in the summer. But I did it. I wore long sleeve clothing for many years. I didn't want colleagues to know, neighbours to know, family to know. It was because I was essentially ashamed, and this wasn't just from my family in my community, but also the extended world, everybody out there.
You even did something with London Fashion Week, I saw, which is pretty crazy. What was that like?
It was an incredible experience, Andy. It really was. And I did it. And the more that I started doing those assemblies, the more my confidence started to grow, knowing that I was getting the response and feedback from girls saying, "Thanks, miss. You make me feel better. Thanks, miss. I don't have to change for anyone else." All that assembly really helped me. It helped me with some of the issues I have, and it was just really refreshing. And that's what spurred me on to continue doing advocacy.
Welcome to the Life with a Difference podcast, a platform to amplify the voices of those living with a visible difference, and also to provide relevant information from industry leaders and experts. Please consider subscribing, and every like, comment, follow and share will help me to build a platform to advocate for the visible difference community. Thank you for listening.
Hi Andy.
Hey Joti, how you doing?
Good, thanks. It's really lovely to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you too. Horrible minute. I thought that maybe you might still be in Spain. I'd messed up the time difference. But you're back in England, aren't you?
Back here, back to school. Yeah, back here,
Yeah.
back to routine. I love what I do, but I do love routine. I find, when I'm away, then things start slipping, bad habits start kicking in. There's only so much red wine I can have every single day.
It's cultural. You're just indulging in the culture.
That's my excuse until I come back and I'm like, oh crikey, it's summer, my clothes don't fit.
I tell you what, your book, obviously we haven't been to Spain as much as you have, but it is just beautiful. I can see why you love it so much. I think weirdly for a long time Brits kind of very ignorantly sort of wrote off Spain a little bit because it's where everyone just went to Benidorm and that's what they had their idea of Spain. I think people are waking up like generally to how incredible it is. The people, the cities, the weather, the food. It's just gorgeous.
It is. And I don't know, I just love everything, the culture and everything,
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd ever move out there for an extended period in the future?
I don't think so because my kids are here. We've got 2 dogs and we're kind of settled here. I mean, I was born in London and I just don't think we'd ever move away. Our families are here as well. So, yeah, I mean, we'd probably go and travel a bit more, but I don't see that being long term.
Yeah. Okay. To start, do you mind introducing yourself and explaining a bit about your visible difference, please?
Yep, of course. So my name is Joti and I have a visible skin difference, which is called vitiligo. And vitiligo affects between 1% to 3% of the world's population. And it doesn't really discriminate against gender, ethnicity, or age. It can affect anyone at any age. So I was diagnosed at 21.
I've got to say that you guys in the vitiligo community are doing a fantastic job. I feel like vitiligo is one of the ones that's really getting out there, and people know that term now straight away. I've met Najit a couple of months ago. He's doing a lot, and I think is it Shankar or Shankar? I haven't met him yet. He's doing amazing work. You're really doing great at getting the word out at the moment.
I think that there's a lot of passionate people out there who want to spread that message through the advocacy, and it's really important to me as a teacher and as a mother to also spread that through to the next generation.
Yeah, you're doing great. I think we're all quite inspired by what you guys are doing, and because we're all in the visible difference community, but we've all in our own little branches. And I think that you guys are doing amazing. In terms of kind of covering the basics, do we know what the cause of vitiligo is?
We don't know, Andy, what the cause is of vitiligo. However, there are many people that say it's down to, some people say it's genetics, other people say that it's also down to gut health, and it's down to diet, and others say that, well, they don't actually know what the reason is for it. I mean, I am still kind of been investigating this myself for many years. I wasn't born with it, as I mentioned previously. And there's no one in my family who has vitiligo. So it was quite a shock when I was diagnosed because we didn't really know what this condition was and what it would involve and what would the outcome would be.
Is it painful at all? Is there any physical sensation?
There isn't any pain as such, but I can actually, sort of share with you a time when it was painful, and that was when I was doing some steroid treatment.
Mhm.
Gone on holiday and I'd exposed myself to far too much sun and my skin started to burn and it was really uncomfortable. Uh, so uncomfortable that when I got back to the UK, I had to go straight to A&E because I had some sort of burns on my skin, which was horrendous. I think it's the only time when I'd actually sort of caused myself some pain through treatment. But other than that, vitiligo doesn't really cause any kind of well, me personally, it hasn't caused me any sort of pain or uncomfortable feelings, sensation.
Okay. Mhm. And you mentioned that it doesn't sort of discriminate. I think ignorantly, I thought because I try and research for every guest, but I also want to kind of learn from the guest as well. So I try not to dig too deep. Um, I thought that it was something that affected more people with darker skin tones, but I get is it just potentially that the contrast, I guess, is more dramatic with a darker skin tone, if that makes sense.
Well, absolutely right. The number of people I've now met who have fairer skin, who have vitiligo, it really surprises me because again, I guess you'll be able to see it, but maybe when the person's tanned a little bit, and you'll see that skin difference in their complexion. But generally, yes, you're absolutely right. There is that kind of maybe, um, ignorance maybe amongst people who'll think that it does just occur with darker skinned people because it's so visual and
Hmm.
it's so out there. And I think
Hmm.
obviously, I mean, now that my skin's blended, it's not so noticeable. But had we had this podcast 5 years ago, my face was incredibly patchy. So were my arms. I had patches everywhere, and it was and the my skin pigmentation was very, very dark. And then I had these white patches too. So it was like very visible. And that was very, very challenging.
Hmm. I hope this isn't too intrusive of a question, but is it do some people with vitiligo almost um, want the vitiligo to blend so that there isn't quite the same contrast, if that makes sense?
An amazing question to ask. And I think had you have asked me that 15 years ago, I would have been like, gosh, what are you talking about? Because all I wanted was a treatment when that first
Hmm.
appeared.
Hmm.
But actually now I'm feeling so much more comfortable within my skin because it has all blended out. I'm going to just show you a little so you can actually sort of see what's going on here. So my skin has all blended out. This is all white. Whereas for many, many years I had lots of patchy skin,
Hmm.
which did make me very uncomfortable because I would stairs. And I just always thought that that's just unwanted attention. So I covered up my skin.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for being so open and honest about that. Yeah, I can totally relate to covering up for sure. That was a big part of your book, and yeah, I don't think I didn't wear a short sleeve t-shirt until I was 17. And that was only because people were essentially sort of picking on me for never wearing a t-shirt that I eventually started, sort of thing. So I totally relate to the whole covering up thing. And then you cover up in the summer, and my symptoms present as redness, and obviously the more you cover up, the hotter you are and the redder you go, and it's a bit of a vicious cycle. It was interesting you talking about different skin tones because we have something similar, like a an issue within the atopic dermatitis world in terms of race and skin tones. In that, when I go to see a healthcare provider and my skin is really flaring, it looks very, very dramatic because it's, lighter skin tone with the redness and it's just there and dramatic and for everyone to see. And even then, it can often be quite difficult to get the care I need. And so, people with the darker skin tones, it can really dull down how dramatic it looks, if that makes sense. And so you might have someone with a dark skin tone who's really, really suffering, but because it doesn't look as bad, um, they find it um, they find it very difficult to be taken seriously and to be treated with the urgency they need. It's partly why my branding is all different skin tones.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how race and skin tones come into it as well. You'd like to think it was in 2025 it'd all be equal by now, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to be the case.
No, I completely agree. And I think within the South Asian community, unfortunately, there is that kind of stigma and prejudice against people that look different. Always been sort of an issue with colorism, and I also found that now that I have gone lighter, I've had people that have said to me, "Oh, well, now at least you're one color and you've become fairer," and I'll kind of just think about what they've said and I'll digest what they've said and I'll actually realize, gosh, this is an older generation this is the older generation speaking out, that's their mentality, that's the way they think, things used to be, whereas, the darker you were, the less attractive you were, and that's how it was in, many, many years ago. And so, you still have these kind of threads of comments that sometimes push through. I mean, fortunately for me, it doesn't happen very often now because people have learned to really understand through my advocacy and me talking about it so openly about what vitiligo is. So there's this kind of within my family circle, people do understand it a lot better now. So I kind of get very few comments of that sort now, which is positive.
Obviously, you have to be very, very careful not to sound too critical of another culture. Every culture has their pros and cons, but I feel like it's a significant theme within your book is that there are additional challenges potentially with being from the South Asian community, potentially maybe a bit more of a concern of keeping up appearances and things like that. So yeah, would you be comfortable sort of talking about that?
Absolutely. And I think that's just what I touched on previously, that there is always this, keeping up with the Joneses as such, about what you look like, what your, family, you know, looks like, the aesthetical things, in life that appear to be so superficial and that are superficial are what, the South Asian society will kind of look upon as like, yeah, this is like the perfect world, but we're not living in a perfect world. We're living in a world where, this is my reality of living with a skin condition. And unfortunately, when I was diagnosed, I wasn't comfortable to be able to share this with everybody because one, it was a very small spot, so I wasn't really sure of the outcome at 21 and what would happen. When I was told it was spread, I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't really want to believe it as well. So I was quite naive. I wanted to sort of assume that treatment would just solve it all. And then secondly, it was like I wanted to protect my parents because no one had experienced or had come out with this condition or, so I wanted to kind of almost protect them. I didn't want them to be targeted and then people to throw across comments because I know how brutal our our you know South Asian community can be. Now, I chose to do that. I wasn't told to do it. I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. So if I had a social, a work social, or, whatever it was, I chose to cover up. I chose to go in. When I started out my career, I was in banking. I worked in Canary Wharf and I remember wearing these long suits. And I remember dreading getting on that train in the summer, thinking, how am I going to make it to Canary Wharf from home? Because everyone's wearing sleeveless clothing. But I did it. I wore long sleeve clothing for many years. I didn't want colleagues to know, neighbors to know, family to know. It was because I was essentially ashamed. And this wasn't just from my family in my community, but also the extended world, everybody out there. But there is a bit more prejudice. There is a bit more pressure, I think, within the South Asian community, and I do talk about that within my book because that was a challenge that I was sort of facing, and I was worried about the comments and the criticism that would come off the back of that. And I always wanted to protect myself, but I was also only dealing with something that was the unknown. And when you're dealing with something of the unknown, you're trying to get your head around it. So I feel that it took me a very long time to come to terms with it. And I couldn't start sharing it and talking about it and telling people it was vitiligo when I wasn't comfortable with it myself. So essentially, I needed to be okay with it first before I started doing it. And little did I know that it would be the best part of, 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that shows, doesn't it, how difficult it is to come to terms with it. Going off script a little bit, but doesn't it feel so nice to just be open and honest about it now? It was just almost like to go from hiding it your entire life and every kind of almost your every waking moment being around downplay, 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 just stepping forward and doing the complete opposite, I guess.
And
It just feels lovely, doesn't it?
it sounds like you feel like you've experienced a similar journey in that sense as well.
Yeah, yeah. Going to the Changing Faces meetup a few months ago was a real moment, to walk into a room of people all with visible differences, and we all, we've all got our challenges, but we all have similar stories. Was amazing. So yeah, as I say, I totally related to so much of your story, and that must have been very, very difficult. That London lifestyle is all very glamorous, isn't it? And it's all about looking very perfect all the time, and that must have just been absolutely
It
exhausting.
was exhausting, and then when I decided that I wanted to go into teaching, that was another step forwards. I mean, I love teaching, and I was doing private tutoring when I was at banking, and I realized I wanted to do the PGCE. But then I was like, at the back of my head, how am I going to stand in front of a classroom
Mm,
when I've got vitiligo? How can I do that?
yeah.
Even, I was so close to not going through with it, so close to not going through with it because of that one reason.
Mm, totally understandable. Yeah, it makes me almost shake with fear even thinking of doing it. So yeah, I can totally understand that for sure. Yeah. Just to quickly go back a little bit, I think it's a really important theme and something just to mention. I think we all, um, in the visible difference community feel that um, loss of identity to a degree. Maybe that loss of maybe it's the person that you were supposed to be that you don't quite, but you experienced it kind of more tangibly, I suppose, and that you experienced kind of a loss of feeling of belonging within your culture. I think that's something that I hadn't considered before for people that live with vitiligo. Would you mind talking about that?
Course. So obviously, as I was kind of struggling with a lot of stress in the initial few years, I was getting really anxious about my skin, and obviously the hiding and going to certain functions or weddings or parties or socializing with friends would always instill so much anxiety within myself. And the more that I was anxious and stressed about it, the more my vitiligo was spread. And I knew there was a correlation with the both, but I just couldn't stop myself from getting stressed about it. That was just part of, how I was dealing with it. And I knew that it was making it worse. And as I was hiding my skin, I was kind of really, really worried about like, what people would say. And so for initially, it was just the hiding it. The hiding it was what I needed to do to kind of make myself more comfortable. I never really thought about identity when I was first diagnosed because it was just a spot. And I thought that doing a few treatments here and that I did consistent treatments, different types of treatment, Ayurvedic treatment, Chinese treatment, steroid treatment, puva treatment. I did that over the course of 10 years. Before I was due to give birth to my daughter, I actually was 90% pigmented with the private treatment I was doing with steroids, and it worked. And I thought, great, I'm not going to have to deal with this any longer. But long story short, after I had my daughter, my pigment all came back again. Now, when it came back again in 2009, it started coming back more aggressively. And I then realized that all my passion and my dedication to doing treatment didn't work. And that's when I let go and I gave up hope of doing treatments altogether. Um, and I just had a baby and I didn't have the energy to go through with any more treatment. But that's when the pigment started coming back. And it wasn't even then that I started thinking about that loss of identity. The loss of identity happened when my children became slightly older, and it's being out with them now. It's actually getting the stares because people will look at my daughter and look at my son and look at me and probably think like, is she stepmom or is she auntie or is she a friend taking them out? I don't look anything like my kids. And that actually starting to bug me a little bit in the sense that well, both children have taken after their father in their looks, but I don't even have any brown pigment left in me that makes me just feel like uh, I know I'm their mother, but that's kind of starting to bug me a little bit. And I think that it's only now that my skin's like nearly, like I'd say about 90% depigmented, that I do feel like I've lost my identity. I mean, I'm still culturally in tune with my religion and who I am and so forth, but I do feel like I've kind of lost, my identity is such. And it's funny because the other day I was in the staff room, and I only just joined this school in January, so I'm quite relatively new to the school. And another member of staff walked in, and I turned around and I made a comment, and she said, "Oh, I didn't think you speak English. I thought you were Italian." And I just sort of looked at her, and I didn't want to go into it because I thought, I don't know you that well. I'm not going to go into it. But there was this kind of like, where is she from? Like, and the kids do ask who teaches Spanish, and I've got this lighter coloured skin, and I do feel like I've kind of lost my identity. I do, and that does kind of bug me a little bit as such, because it means that people are questioning, like, where are you from? And that can kind of like make me feel that I kind of question myself as well.
Mm.
So I think,
It's such a core part of who you are, isn't it? And your heritage, and it's again, I don't think it's something that people would particularly consider. But I think it's important that people hear, just how multifaceted visible difference and vitiligo is. That it's not just the physical aesthetics; it goes on, and affects all areas of your life. I think it's important that. I think, speaking for myself and maybe a few others, living with a visible difference, we've often sort of shuffled around in the shadows a little bit and been a bit scared to take up space and to make too much of a fuss and advocate fiercely or anything like that. But I think it's important that we share the real hard hitting examples to show that it does go a lot further than just the aesthetics. So I always share that, my friend Oliver Bromley being asked to leave a restaurant because he was scaring the customers. Amit, his father-in-law, saying to his wife that if she married him, he would kill himself. I think these examples are important to drive home just how deep the stigmatization goes. Would you be comfortable sharing any examples you might have in ways that you've been treated poorly?
I have to, and to be really honest with you, I don't. I've had sort of very positive experiences with my skin, and I think, if I'm very, very honest with you, the main reason for that is because I covered up for many years. So I hid. So people essentially didn't really know like what was going on. So for me, that that was never fully revealed because I hid it, and I hid it so well. To the point where when I did come out with it, my head in my last school was like, "Wow, we didn't know you had vitiligo." I hid it so well. I camouflaged it. So I kind of almost protected myself. I protected myself. I think right now, I think if there was anything that was really raw and really hard hitting that affects me deeply, it would be, is that your daughter? Is that your daughter? Sort of in a way that, God, she doesn't look anything like you, and questioning my identity, questioning like, you don't look anything like her because of my pigmentation. I think that's the only thing really. I think I've never really had any negative comments. And even now, I choose to go into school with my vitiligo on show. I mean, kids are very aware of it. There are a couple of kids in school with vitiligo, so it's kind of out there. Whether people choose to say hurtful things behind my back is another story. But direct comments are made in front of me. I've not really had that. I've had, I've had the non-verbal, uncomfortable feeling where people will look at me and they will make me feel uncomfortable in that way. And I've had that far often than direct verbal comments directed at me. Does that make sense?
Which are almost more complex to deal with, aren't they? Yeah.
So another example was, I'm going to pause here because this really did affect me. And I was with my husband, um, and I was really, really upset. I was really upset.
Please take your time.
I'm going to
Yeah, please take your time.
want to share it, but it's something that really affected me. Where were we? Oh gosh, yes. Oh my goodness. Yes, it was in Spain. It was in Spain. And we went to a big supermarket. We wanted to get a few things before we were on our way back. And I should have shared this on my socials, and I didn't. I actually was gutted I didn't share it. We're in the supermarket and we were picking up a few bits to take back to London. You get everything here, but we wanted to just get some Spanish snacks, things that you don't get here that you can buy. As we walked into the big supermarket, and it was quite cold when we went. I had a thick jacket on, but I didn't have any makeup on. Any makeup on. We walked in, and there were two guys on the electricals as we were walking through, and I saw them laughing at me. I saw them laughing at me, and I became so paranoid. And I turned around straight away and I said to my daughter, they're laughing at me, they're laughing at me. I want to go back and say something. I want to go back and say something. And she could see that I was really worked up about it. And then my husband came over and he was like, what's going on? I said, they're laughing. I said, look at them right now, they're laughing. And I took out my phone and I took out my phone and I wanted to record it. And as I took the phone out, they put their heads down. And I said to him, they were laughing at me. I know they were laughing at me, and I've not had this in years. I've not had this feeling in years. And he was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They might be laughing at something else. It might be something else. I said, no. I said, I know my gut. I know my instinct. I've lived with this condition for many years. I know if someone's like mocking me or laughing at me, but there was something there and I just sensed it and I just knew that they'd made me feel this way. My daughter just pulled me by the arm. She was like, Mummy, don't worry, it's okay. And I turned around again. I was like, shall I go? Shall I go up to them and ask them? Like, I wanted to say, what are you laughing at? And I do speak to them in Spanish. I wanted to say, what are you, do you mind me asking? But in a nice way, what you were laughing at. And I didn't. And I still to this day think to myself, why didn't I go back and ask them? Because I just would have been curious to know, but they've told me the truth. Was it something that I was paranoid about and they weren't even laughing at me? Or was there something there? You know? Was there something
Yeah.
there?
Hmm.
Because
I totally, yeah.
even though the vitiligo's gone, I still have it there and there. I'm not wearing any makeup now. I just have a bit, and that does make me very paranoid, you know. So I quite often say to people, and I do advocate, you'll never know if someone's looking at your clothes or looking at you, you know, might be thinking or saying something in a positive way, and you've taken it negatively. But I just knew, Andy, I knew that was not a nice comment what they were saying because they were in stitches and they
Mm.
kept looking at me and I was not paranoid. And my daughter picked up on it. She said, no, you're right, you're right. And I just kind of knew it. I just,
Yeah, you're attuned to it. We're attuned to it. We know it. You know it.
so that,
Yeah, and you know that a lot of these people are cowardly, and so you know the second that you call them out, they will just deny it, and then you're put in a very uncomfortable situation. Yeah, it's so difficult. And I think that's a good lesson for people in that you are a fantastic advocate. You speak so well for your community. You know, you're a confident woman. But even you sometimes find it hard in that moment with all the emotion going on to go and confront someone and put them in their place. It's so hard.
I felt so vulnerable. And when I sort of said, right, I'm going, and then and then they put their heads down, and then my husband's like, just leave it, just leave it. And I said, I want to know what they were laughing at. Like before I would have never done that. I think next time it happens, I will charge up to someone and say, oh, just wondering why you were looking or why you were laughing, because I think it's curiosity now. What's going on in the head of someone else when they're sort of making you feel like that. So for me, I think it just comes down to that example of, for me, it's just stares and that uncomfortable feeling if I catch someone looking at me because I kind of know it and most of the time I'm right about it.
Yeah, yeah. And people will often accuse you of being overly sensitive, and it's like, no, you just haven't walked this path. You don't see how often those stairs come. Yeah, you don't know what it's like. Yeah. Going off script a little bit again. Do you have the thing as well? I feel I almost feel I guess a little bit at mercy of people because I'm so anticipating that comment. I feel I'm just filled with anxiety anticipating that comment, I guess. So I'm almost waiting for it, and like my shoulders are kind of around my ears, just anticipating it, and I feel I feel at the mercy of people because with one sentence they can really emotionally and mentally affect me. And I wish I was in the place where I could let it roll off me, but I can't. Do you have that as well, where you feel on edge all the time? I guess.
Andy, I had it. I had that feeling for many years, which is why I'm really surprised with how I behaved when that happened to me in Spain, because I've not had a moment like that in years. I used to live like that, like how you're just describing for many years, always worried about what people were going to say. Are they gonna notice? Are they going to see what they're going to say? What they thinking? What's back of their head? They're looking at me. They're looking at me. What are they looking at? They look at my feet. They're looking at, are they see? Did they see the new patch? But you know what? We can't carry on living that way because you know what? People look at each other, whether you've got a physical difference or not. We all look at each other. It's normal. We get on that underground train, we look at each other. We're at a social, we'll look at each other. It's normal. It's human curiosity to observe people and see what they look like. But we take it 10 times worse because we think they're looking at our skin, our our skin condition, our just difference. And I think that that's what makes us even more sensitive to it as well. But I think that, one of the things that I've started doing less of is worrying, which is why my reaction surprised me hugely because I've not had a moment like that in a long time. I did used to react like that, but now I don't. I'm not bothered what people think and say. I think the fact that they were laughing, I think that's what got to me because they could have looked and turned around, I wouldn't be bothered. It didn't, it wouldn't have bothered me, but the fact that there was just, it felt like they were mocking me, laughing, and that kind of really got to me.
Hmm. Very understandably, in front of your family. Yeah, very understandably. There's a really good book, you might have read it, called The Body Keeps a Score, and it talks about, this long-term stress and high cortisol levels and living in a fight or flight stage all the time is just not good for you. As you say, we just need to get to that place, and it's a hard journey, but get to that place where you're not filled with anxiety all the time. And it's something I'm working on. It's something I think this podcast is very good feel for, because um, I find being sociable anxiety inducing. This kind of forces me to do so, which I think is really, really helpful. And every single person I talk to is really lovely. And we've all got that, connection straight away because we have some similar stories. And yeah, it's been brilliant so far. In terms of treatments that are available for vitiligo, what are the current treatments which are available?
So I know that ruxolitinib was a treatment that was an offer for the NHS about 3 years. No, sorry, the year before last. It was actually meant to be available on the NHS, but apparently, I think my up-to-date knowledge on that is that it's not going to be available on the NHS. So I know this has caused some sort of outcry within our community because there were many people relying on that steroid cream to allow them to try it and see if it works for them. And it was a big revelation as well. I mean, I remember talking about that with the BBC a couple of years ago and really sort of sharing my viewpoints on that. And it is, even though I wouldn't choose treatment now because I've turned nearly all white, there are many people out there who are in my situation, like where I was 20 years ago, and who are relying on that treatment to find, to help them reverse that pigment. So it has been a letdown. There is still Puva that's available, I know, on the NHS. And there are so many other people that talk about gut health as well. I know someone on social media who's, really working with people on gut health to help them think about the choices of food they make and maybe think about avoiding some foods that could be, exacerbating or like, steering that a vitiligo on. So, there are people out there that are talking about, gut immunity as well and thinking about that. I mean, in terms of treatment. I think the only one that I think that is, available at the moment for most people is Puva. But I need to read up a little bit more about the steroid cream because I understand that's no longer available currently on the NHS.
Mhm. I think it's trundling through with nice, and who knows what that means. That could be years, unfortunately. It's the same situation with the AD medication. I've actually taken a padasitinib and abrocitinib, which I think are part of the same family. They're JAKs inhibitors, so they block an inflammation pathway. Um, and yeah, it's the same situation, that it takes a long time for it to be approved. You mentioned now that you wouldn't take the ruxolitinib, but 20 years ago, do you think you would have?
100%. I mean,
Would you?
I was desperate to find a cure for my vitiligo, and I would have done anything, and I did do everything to make sure that I tried everything out there. The first thing I tried was Puva at an amazing London hospital, and that seemed to sort of take some sort of effect. Within the first few months, I noticed some spots coming back, brown spots coming back. But then it was so exhausting and tiring to do. It was really, really exhausting and tiring to do. And then after that, 3 years later, I tried some Chinese medicine, which was disgusting, like putting
I think I had the same stuff.
a tree in a
Mm.
body. Did it stink the whole house out? Did it
It
leave
was
it open?
horrendous. I
Horrendous.
was allowed 3 wine gums afterwards, but it still wasn't worth it. It was awful.
Similar to what I had, so we'd had that experience of some sort of tea that was
Mm.
drinkable. Horrendous. I mean, is there a stronger word than that? Because I couldn't physically drink it, and I think I tried it for a week, and I remember actually wanting to vomit when I was it just couldn't go down. It was just like, the thought of it now
Yeah.
makes me feel like, oh, terrible. 3
I,
white gums, that wasn't enough, really. I mean,
no,
have like
no, I needed a barrel.
something down your mouth.
Yeah,
It's just, I can
yeah.
imagine. And yeah, I mean, and then I tried a steroid treatment, which was with a private doctor, and that worked. And then, that's when I started to see the results. Um, but that was exhausting. I was traveling for 2 hours every 2 weeks to do the treatment. It would take a whole Sunday or a Saturday of my weekend. That was dedication, though. I did it, and when I was repigmented, it was amazing. But I ended up putting on a lot of weight with the steroid treatment. And then, as I mentioned, when I fell pregnant with my daughter, that kind of stopped, and my pigment all came back.
I I try as a podcast host to, because obviously as a guest it's all about you, but I relate to your story so much, and I've got your book here actually. Everyone should read Joti's book. It's brilliant. Um, I had the exact same experience. Yeah, trying everything and anything, trying all sorts. My parents, bless them, throwing everything at it when they exhausted the NHS. Then it was, yeah, Chinese herbal medicine, you name it. That desperation, that constantly searching, trying to find the thing, willing to do anything. And in that world, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen. So you hear a lot of crazy stuff, and you think, well, it's worth a try. Might as well do it. And all of a sudden, you're a decade on. You've tried all sorts, and you're still unfortunately in the same situation. It's a very difficult one to manage, isn't it? Because I can understand people's desperation, but it can have a mental effect.
It can, a mental, and I bet you felt very emotional because it's letting, you feel let down after you put so much time, energy, and money even for some of the treatments into some of them, and then at the end you don't get the result you are anticipating, so you get constantly knocked down, and you think to yourself, I've put so much into this and I've got nothing back, and it's disheartening. It
Yeah,
really,
it really is
really
quite crushing. Yeah, you always think the next one is it. We found it. This is going to be the one. This is the one. And I had this similar with you with a PUVA, which stands for, is it photo? It's light therapy,
is
isn't it?
like
But I'm
therapy.
not sure. Yeah, yeah.
Ultra
I had something with a drug called dupilumab, which is a new medication that's helping a lot of people. It's a monoclonal antibody, and I had 6 months where I was cured. It was perfect. My
really.
skin couldn't have been better, and I thought, I've done it. I found it. I put the time in. We got there, and then unfortunately, after about 6 months, it went off a cliff, and it's hard. It's hard to deal with. It's crushing, and I wouldn't take that time back, of course. But just in a similar situation to yours, the when your vitiligo came back, it's hard to deal with, isn't it?
Wow, that's so similar. I can't believe like that the stories of treatment they kind of align there.
Yeah.
Love to talk to you more about that as well
Yeah.
separately.
I think it's all linked, isn't it? The autoimmune and skin. I think there is some ties there. Just when I think of it really quickly for people listening, I always try and give some practical advice. So I was really struggling with my scalp, really, really badly. Covered in weeping sores, and it was pretty horrendous. And it was actually when I went to Tenerife. The second I got off that plane, I could almost feel it healing. And within a day, it was gone. And I thought, that's got to be something to do with the sun. It has to be, because it was the middle of winter. And so I bought this derma healer. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't have any affiliation with them, but it's a light therapy wand, I guess. I started using that and it cleared it up. Now, with all this stuff, you never know. It goes up and down on its own so much that you never know whether it's coincidence or whatever. But if people are looking for something to try, that seems to have sorted me out. So it doesn't seem to help me anywhere else. I've experimented other parts of my body. It just seems to be my scalp. Um, so just in case anyone's listening,
It's incredible.
just give it a try.
You just sort of saw what was going on there in the heat, and then kind of put two and two together, and you've kind of almost found your own treatment.
Yeah, I'm always on Google, trying to find stuff, and I have a mix of a few conditions. And psoriasis, the main thing with psoriasis is that it's your skin cells are rejuvenating too quickly, and the sun can slow that process down, and so that's what that's potentially doing. So yeah,
Where, where did you pick that up from?
I think it's called Derma Healer. It's got a Philips bulb in it, and off somewhere on the internet there was a few of them.
Interesting, interesting, because back in the day, I remember having to go and find a huge, long light, UV light, and to pick
Mhm.
one up, and we had to like hire a van for the day to go and pick it up. It was huge. And just looking at now what's available for people, it's incredible, really.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It makes you grateful to be alive when we are and also where we are. You know, I get my medication delivered to me and it's very expensive, and so to get that for free is a real privilege, and so we have to count our blessings a bit, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
Another area of your book, key part of your book that I really related to was the almost sense of panic before your wedding day. You know, for everyone else, everyone has the nerves, everyone feels. But I'd like to think for most people it is mixed with happiness and joy and excitement. But I feel like for me, especially and potentially for you, um, fear and panic and maybe a little bit of dread was the overriding emotion. Would you mind talking about
Of
that?
course, of course. And you just summed it all up in a nutshell, you know, the fact that when you get married, you're in the limelight, everyone's looking at you. I think for me, it was just that build up. And obviously, I had a few cultural traditions that I mentioned in my book that were part of being, part of an Indian ceremony, and that I did not let happen. I did not want them to go ahead and happen because that would have meant people sort of touching my arm, seeing my skin. And at that time, I remember, there was a bit of confusion amongst the older generation, wondering why I didn't want to have that ritual done. But actually, I think now people know about the condition. They realize, oh, that's why she didn't have it done because it meant touching her arms. Now, and at that point, I'd covered my whole arm in makeup. So
Do you mind if I ask, sorry, just quickly, do you mind if I ask, at your wedding day, who knew? Was it just literally just your mum and dad, and that was it? Nobody else knew?
Jen, that's a really good question. Mum, dad, my husband, my sister, and my best
No,
friends. And my
that
best
was it.
That was it. Oh, and my in-laws, of course, and my in-laws. And that was it. No one
Wow.
else knew. And
Wow.
it was a big wedding. We had like, a lot of members on my husband's side and my side, but no one knew. And we had a lot of members, we had a lot of family there attending. And I had my bridal outfit made so that, my feet were covered, my arms were covered up to here, and I had makeup done where it was completely covered, so no one would have seen a thing. Because I think generally, anyway, for an Indian bridal wedding, y- women do wear quite a lot of heavy makeup anyway. So that wasn't really anything unusual. I don't think anyone really sort of stuffed or thought anything was unusual. I kind of got away with it. But I was anxious. I think for me, obviously, I knew what was going on. I knew I'd covered my skin. I knew that I was really hot underneath my outfit. I was worried I'd sweat. I was worried some of the makeup would come off, and for photography that might show. So I was very worried. I was very anxious about patches appearing because I had a very patchy face as well. So I was worried about some makeup perhaps coming off, people giving me kisses and hugs, and then the makeup coming off. So yeah, I did have a big bag of makeup with me at that day, and I do remember kind of constantly topping up and checking if my skin was okay. I was very
Mhm,
paranoid.
mhm. But it all came together in the end, and
It
you said you were
did.
quite happy with how you looked, which is lovely. And it was the same for me. You know, it does come together in the end. And so for anyone listening, I know it's anxiety inducing, but on the day you do feel the love from everyone. So as it's easy to say, but try not to let it completely override, the build up and taint your day. Um, but unfortunately, even today, saying all that, even today, going to weddings now as a guest, it's still one of those situations that is quite anxiety inducing. You know, everyone's supposed to be looking their absolute best, um, and it can be very very difficult. We know a guy called David who's also a Changing Faces campaigner, and he was saying the other day he went to a wedding and had a kid chasing him around, giving him a really hard time, and he's already gone into that wedding, feeling quite anxious and worrying about his appearance, and then to have that as well must be really, really difficult. I think something that Changing Faces does offer, which might help people a little bit, is the skin camouflage service. Um, there's obviously we're all working towards this idea of acceptance and that we can be calm and happy in ourselves, and we're we don't let it affect us. But that's a long path, and if you're not at that stage, which I'm not, I wouldn't feel any concern with having that in your back pocket. You know, for me, if I woke up on my wedding day and my skin was absolutely horrendous, I would want in my back pocket some of that camouflage so that I can have that tool. And I think there's a stupid thing about blokes in that we see it as makeup and we don't want to do it. And I think that if you can take that step and do it, I don't think you'll regret it at all.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I think that the anxiety is exactly the same for a man as a woman with a visual difference because, you still have the same concerns and worries about, how people are going to react and respond and then how it can make you feel.
Yeah, definitely. Friend's mum, Karen, gave you the idea of becoming a teacher.
Yeah.
As I say, to me, that filled me with dread. And I was speaking to my friend Dan, and he has a podcast as well, and he has a facial scar, and he was considering it, but he played tennis on quite a high level, and he did some coaching and was getting some comments even at that level, which kind of put him off. So, how is that experience being a teacher with a visible difference generally?
I absolutely love what I teach, and that's Spanish. And I love teaching young people. And actually, we have no reason to fear them because we've got a whole generation of young people who are growing up with so many vulnerabilities, insecurities, and worries of their own. But when they see someone out there with a visible difference, it actually reassures them knowing that they can be confident in the skin they're in. And that's what I'm all about. I'm about showing our young people that you can be comfortable and confident in who you are. You don't need to follow the crowd. You don't need to become someone else. And you can be who you are. And I think even in my current school, I'm not doing a lot of advocacy. I'm not doing any assemblies as such. So I'm only there on a 1 year contract. But one of the things that I really want to be able to do is sort of really show myself for who I am, be confident in who I am. And just on Tuesday, it was incredibly hot. I went into school wearing a short sleeve dress, and it's the first time I've gone into school sleeveless. And I did feel a tiny bit paranoid, but not one child said anything. And they've seen people with different skin conditions. Children are very aware now. I mean, we actually think, they've come a long way from how it was when we were growing up. They're very sort of in tune with things that are going on, maybe because of phones and technology and iPads and so forth, but they are very much aware. I think that they're actually through PSHE lessons being taught about this as well. This actually comes into PSHE, the topic of being confident, self-confidence, self-love, and all of this. This is part of PSHE in the curriculum. And I think I did a lot of work in my former school. I held a lot of assemblies because at Vitiligo, my head teacher, put me on a pedestal and said, like, Joti, look, I think you're the best advocate, to share and talk about vitiligo. And I did a lot of work around the subject about body confidence. And I think the way forwards is we've just got to be ourselves, be real, authentic, and raw and vulnerable. And yes, I am going to have days where I go into school and I'm feeling slightly uncomfortable. I am going to have days where I'm on holiday and someone's going to make me feel uncomfortable. But it's where I am now. I'm at peace with my skin, and for so many years, I was battling it. I wanted to cure. I wanted to kind of cure it. I wanted to reverse my pigmentation. I wanted to find, a treatment for it. I was always trying to challenge my skin condition. I was always trying to, do something to change it. But the moment I said, right, I'm letting go of all of that, I'm wiping the slate clean, and I'm just going to live with it and see what happens. That's when the tables turn.
I think it's great as well that I think a lot of us, unfortunately, a lot of us aren't full time advocates. So we kind of do our full time job and then we do advocacy on the side. Whereas I feel like you work as an advocate 24/7. I think that it's a big part of your job at school as well. I think, yeah. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing and thank you for your confidence with that. And then all of a sudden you got your first big advocacy project with the BBC, which is quite a big one. It's kind of jumping in at the deep end. How was that? How did that first one go?
That was years ago, and I now look back and I think to myself, it was the first time the Vitiligo Society reached out to me and said, "Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Well, possibly." Go in there saying yes because I wanted to know what it would involve, and it was only a small role. And I think the interesting thing was, Andy, that they wanted me to go on set without my makeup on, and at that time in 2016, I was like, "No, you want me, I'm coming on set with my makeup on, but I will show my arms. So it just shows that, in 2016, I was still wearing a full face of makeup, but I was just kind of revealing my arms. So I only started sort of showing my skin gradually. I didn't all of a sudden wake up one day and say, right, that's it, I'm going out in a shorts and t-shirt. It was a very gradual process. And that really allowed me to blossom and bloom because when I did that documentary, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. And that's when I actually opened up to the head and said, look, I've got vitiligo. I'm doing this documentary. And um, I just wanted to let you know, obviously, because I don't want to put the school into disrepute and you need to know about it. And she was just like, Joti, we didn't have a clue that you have vitiligo. Like, what's this all about? So that opened up an amazing opportunity for the school as well, because being a girls' school, body image is like right up there. And they wanted, and for them, it was like, wow, like now that I've done this documentary, right, you're going to take lead and you're going to host these assemblies and you can do one for Mental Health Awareness Week or, Stress Awareness Week. And you're the perfect role model for it. And I did it. And the more that I started doing those assemblies, the more my confidence started to grow, knowing that I was getting the response and feedback from girls saying, thanks, miss. You make me feel better. Thanks, miss. I don't have to change for anyone else. All that assembly really helped me. It helped me with some of the issues
Yeah,
I have. And it was just really refreshing.
it's great to hear.
Yeah, that's what spurred me on to continue doing
Yeah.
advocacy.
It's funny how it's so daunting beforehand, but it always goes the same way when you do these things. Everyone is very receptive, everyone's encouraging, everyone's supportive. Obviously, you get some strange people, but generally the reception is always so positive that it does spur you on to do some more. I think we did a similar one with ITN. I was watching one of your videos the other day. I think I did one that was it was the exact same layout. So I think we must have probably crossed paths at some point. I'll have to
Yeah.
show you it.
Oh, I'd love to see that. ITNU,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe?
yeah. I'll show you. I'll send you my link.
I'd love to.
You even did something with London Fashion Week. I saw,
Yeah,
which is pretty crazy. What was that like?
that was working with inclusivity, diversity with a lady who does a lot of sort of work alongside bringing models with visible differences and to highlight and showcase them in during London Fashion Week. So I again that was several years ago, but it really did take me out of my comfort zone because I'd never done anything like that before. Um, and it was an incredible experience. I got to meet many, many other wonderful role models with visual differences. And again, that was just one of those little stepping stones that allowed me to grow in confidence and to really understand and sort of get to know myself better, to realize that I don't have to hide behind my clothing or makeup, but I can actually be comfortable in who I am. And I can take in these projects and be comfortable in who I am, which essentially is, it was an incredible experience, Andy. It really was.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a good lesson um, from you, Jyoti, in terms of boundaries and doing what you're comfortable with. If for anyone thinking about getting into advocacy, you'll be thrown some things. Don't feel any pressure to do it if you're not comfortable. Like you said with the makeup on your face, this is a very emotive and personal thing, and you don't owe anyone anything. So do as much or as little as you like, because all of a sudden you might be plunged into the middle of a corporation and there's head of this and head of that, and they're trying to get you to do things. But yeah, just do what you feel comfortable with. Do you have any sort of general advice for people looking to get into
I
advocacy?
do, I do. I think you've got to first of all take things in your own pace, in your own stride. I think it's always important to follow your own path and your own journey. So just do what feels right for you. Share what feels right for you. And again, as Andy said, when you get some follow-ups for perhaps taking part in a campaign, make sure that you put your boundaries in place. For example, I once had a journalist who asked me if I'd be happy to do some shoot, if I'd be happy to do a shoot, but wearing a bikini. And I said, well, no, because first of all, I'm a teacher and I don't want those images going around of me in a bikini. And secondly, I don't feel comfortable in that. I didn't even wear shorts and a t-shirt or even wear a t-shirt on its own with trousers. You know, I was so worried about my skin. There was no way I was going to go out in a shoot and publicize myself in that way. So I think it's so important to have your boundaries, to be able to say no and to do what you feel comfortable with. But advocacy is a really beautiful journey for anyone thinking of going into it because you don't know who you're helping behind that screen behind that closed door. You don't know who you're going to support. And, just sharing a snippet, part of your journey, could inspire and help someone come out of their shell like I've done.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It feels, as we said, it feels very liberating to step forward and not hide. And so, yeah, as you say, baby steps, but I think it's often worth giving it a try. Just try that first project and see if it's something that agrees with you, I guess. In terms of other practical advice, do you have any for people living with vitiligo or potential or maybe a carer of someone with vitiligo?
Yeah. For me, I think the most important bit of advice is to look after yourself and to make sure that you're seeking the support that you need and making sure you're reaching out to societies that are there for support. Like we've got Changing Faces, we've got the British Skin Foundation, we've got the Vitiligo Society. And I think it's so important to remember you're not alone and that these places, these charities, these support groups, you'll find someone who can support you through your journey, where they can understand what you're going through. And I think sometimes, even your closest of friends or your family may not understand that. And you can't expect them to because you're the one that's living it, and walking this journey alone. So it's important to reach out for the right support, communicate with people and let them know how you're feeling. Don't isolate yourself like I did. Talk to people because you're not alone.
100%, yeah, 100%. And we're not just faces on a screen. Please get in touch with us if you want to talk to us. We'll always, help out and make ourselves available. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, we're always here. What is something that you're hopeful for in the future?
I just want to see us being able to live comfortably, people with visible differences being able to live comfortably in peace and just be able to have, the right treatment like everybody else in this world. The equality is what's really important to me, that there is equality between everybody.
And where can people find you?
Andy, so I am currently available on my Instagram as Positively Diverse. I have a website as well, which is Positively Diverse. I have Facebook and LinkedIn as well. But my account currently is on not lockdown. I call it lockdown, but because I'm in a school for a 1 year contract, I've had to lock all my accounts and make them private. So until December, everything's private. So if anyone wants to add me, it might be worth just connecting with me via my website or my Instagram account, which is currently private. But if you message me or join or just request, I can add you on there.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so much for your time. Can I just say you have a fantastic teacher voice. You speak so clearly. It's brilliant. Because I'm all shy, I kind of mumble and stuff.
No, you
You've
don't.
got an
That's what.
excellent teacher voice.
You're really clear.
Thank
Really
you.
clear.
And I was, I've been watching all your things and doing a bit of research on you, and you speak so well for our community and for vitiligo. And so thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you,
If there was someone I wanted to be the spokesperson of Visible Difference, you'd be right up there for sure.
Andy.
So
I really appreciate
so
your kind comments, and I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. And it's been a real pleasure.